I knew instantly, I was like, this is not safe. Like, this line is like, divorce is horrible and it's going to ruin everyone's life. And I'm not abusive. I have done things that have been abuse to you, but I'm not abusive.
From the outside, so many people just look like the happy couple. And in my case, I was definitely performing that role of part of this happy couple. People will say things like, you're so lucky. And, you post photos and smile at dinner parties with your friends. And people truly have no idea what the hell is going on behind closed doors. And I want to talk today about how we get through that, why we do that, what we're doing that for. And I want to introduce my guest. This is a bit different for me, and I am so happy to have you on the show. So this is Sarah White, and she is a past client, but a survivor turned coach. And I want to talk about your experience, certainly, but I would love for you to just take a minute and introduce yourself.
So my name is Sarah. I am a mom of 3 older kids. They are my joy and my whole entire heart. And I recently, through a lot of coaching and clarity and just a journey, had discovered that my relationship was emotionally abusive, and it took me a long time to get out of the denial piece because it was just, I didn't want to let go of that dream. But I feel so much healthier now that I'm out. Lisa's program helped me immensely. I got a lot of different people to try to help me on this journey, find clarity. And so, I have turned into a coach as well. I went through a program this last year where I had learned to turn my grief into purpose. And so that's what I want to do. I mean, I feel like it's lived experience, it's real, it's raw, and I can really help women on this journey. So,
yeah, I'm so glad. And I know that you can. I think that there's something to be said for survivors that have turned into coaches, therapists who have lived experience in this. It's just, it hits different when you're talking to someone who's been through this before. It really does. Now, I know every marriage has problems. Every relationship has problems, right? This isn't about perfection, but I want to kind of get into exposing what goes on behind this idea of a perfect marriage. Why do we stay quiet? Why do we protect the man that's hurting us? And how do we even figure out that something's wrong? I relate to this idea of like, oh, I'm being emotionally abused and you don't know it yet. It hits one day. Something happens where it's like, and for a lot of people, it was watching TikTok, watching Instagram, watching YouTube videos and figuring out like, hey, this person is speaking to my situation. It's abuse. This is abuse. Oh my God. But we're the happy couple at one point. There's a social pressure to look happy. Tell me a little bit about your life. What pressures did you feel kind of externally to perform this happiness?
I think for me, a lot of it was actually not even performative. I wanted it to be a healthy relationship. I was in denial that it wasn't, and I tried so hard to make it be that, and kind of ignore the pain I was in, ignore my body signals, ignore my gut, ignore my intuition, all of those things that for a long time were screaming at me. And I think a big part of it is, I was a mom and I didn't want that stigma of being like the divorced family for so long. There's a lot of pressure within religious circles to maintain this, outside appearance. And for me, that was a big part of my story. Actually, we were heavily involved in church and missions. And so having that mixed in with the confusing behavior was almost too much for me to bear sometimes, because from the outside looking in, we were this, and I knew the truth of what was really happening. And so it was really just a protection of a larger system, really, not just one person, kind of protecting lots of people's and protecting myself from the incredible grief that comes with admitting the truth. And that has also been its own thing. I didn't realize how hard it would actually be. I will say now that I've done it, there are some days where I'm like, this wasn't as hard or as scary as I thought it would be. And I am in such a healthier place mentally and emotionally and even physically. My headaches have been cut in half. So I could say so much about that.
Well, we know the body keeps score, right? We know it's connected to so many things. The amount of people that I talk to that talk about how much better life gets after, there's your incentive to try to leave. Not that it's easy, I know. This sort of togetherness that was important I love what you said. I'm asking the question about performance, and you're like, I don't know if I was actually performing it or it didn't feel like it at the time. Do you feel like you were protecting your own reputation in addition to maybe his or the family and trying to fit in, trying to follow the rules?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there was a big piece that was like, this is what we do, and we don't go above this line is like divorce is horrible and it's going to ruin everyone's life, and protecting my kids, and wanting them to have it, have everything and not have to face these painful things. So it's like almost like protecting my kids' emotions in a way, and just taking it all on so they wouldn't have to feel that pain.
Yeah, I think it's so hard. I know not everybody in an abusive relationship has kids. And for those that do, you've got kids at all kinds of different ages. And mine were 1 and 3, and I don't know what to say to kids at all these different ages when you're in it. It's so hard of they might see something or witness something, experience something directly. How do you justify that? I know there's this really like internal battle of, my God, if I stay, what am I teaching them? But if I leave, what am I teaching them? And how do I decide? I think also touching on sometimes divorce doesn't feel like part of a possible decision, like it's a sin, right? Especially if you are religious. Do you feel like, it prevented you from leaving at first?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, people quote God hates divorce. That was
Mhm.
completely in my head for so long. And then I was like, actually God hates when somebody continues to hurt you repeatedly when you've told them that this is hurting me. I think God hates that more.
Yeah, God does hate abuse.
Yep. And it got to a point, my kids are older, so it really got to a point where I had to start facing questions like, if my daughters were in a relationship like this, what would I tell them with an honest, straight face? And it wasn't to stay. Or if my son was treating his wife in these ways, would I tell him he needs to knock it off? Or would I continue to tell him, oh, it's okay. Like you're just.
She must have provoked you.
Yeah, or it was a mistake. Just, try to be better and don't make that mistake again. I would tell him this is not how you were raised. So I had to start facing some really hard questions when my kids were getting older about what I believed and what I wanted them to live out in their lives. In a way, I felt like I had to be an example of that, and I couldn't run from that anymore because they were getting older.
Yeah, I know. I think as kids get older, it's like, oh, the amount of people I'm like, and I advocate for people to not share what's happening with their kids in terms of the abuse. I obviously mean if they aren't seeing it with their own eyes, right? I don't think children should know. I'm not saying lie for him, right? That's not what I mean. But depending on the age too, there's so much nuance and context. So I always like tiptoe
Mhm.
around those statements like landmines, honestly. But
Yeah.
I kids see this and experience it. And again, I'm not saying that it's easy to leave, but many people stay for their kids. And the question really is like, what does staying teach them? And now when there's safety concerns, I'm not saying, because I know you might have to give custody to an abusive
Mhm.
person and you're worried for them, all that. I get all that. But while you're there, they are seeing you being so mistreated and they're all learning. I mean, genders aside, all the kids are learning that it's okay to either behave this way or be treated this way or both.
Mm.
And those are not messages that we want, but we like the idea of an intact family.
Mm.
I think I know abusive men know that. They know that the intact family is important to you, that your faith, if I know you are of faith, but for people, they know that these things are so important and they use that sort of perfect marriage thing. It can be a really strong manipulation tool for these men.
Yeah, 100%. And it was a big manipulation tool for me. The manipulation was heavy. And for me also, the abuse was never physical. It was all emotional. It was all cycles where there'd be like lying, hiding, cheating, not telling the truth, lots of gaslighting, lots of my emotions were too much or dismissed emotions, dismissed concerns. It's not that big of a deal. You're making too much out of this. So my emotions were just dismissed a lot, I feel. And I'm sure that was something that could have been picked up on, but that is also just as damaging to somebody's nervous system and somebody's brain as physical abuse. And I know that's super hard for me to comprehend too. But once I got it, I was like, no, this makes perfect sense. My body has been screaming for years, and I ended up with chronic illness. So I have all the things, the religious
Yeah.
piece, the chronic illness, trying to hold it together.
It so does, you know. Now, you said something so key because I did experience physical abuse towards the end, but I think that I didn't experience it for 7 years was a huge part of why I didn't see it, why I missed, like, this is abuse. And for women who are in these relationships or have been and have never experienced physical abuse, when it's, and I'm majorly air quoting, like just emotional abuse, on the other side, you are so correct. If physical abuse and emotional abuse do the same thing to your body and to your nervous system, there's no difference. So it
Mhm.
doesn't actually matter. But when you're in it, I think what matters is, well, he's not hitting you.
Mhm.
It's not that bad. You don't have it that bad. As if hitting you would be worse. And I think what's interesting, and I'm not here to compare trauma, being physically abused or emotionally, psychologically abused, it's all bad, full stop. We're not comparing. But there is something to be said for the physical abuse that people think, oh, then I would really get it. If he would just hit me, I would know it's abuse. I'm just going to go ahead and raise my hand. No, you wouldn't, because I didn't. And plenty of my clients tell me they didn't catch that it was abuse. It's like an isolated incident. But when it's emotional abuse, it is even easier to miss that it's abuse. They also oscillate. So, and you kind of touched on that too. What's your experience been with, like, kindness and cruelty, same day, same week?
Well, the intermittent reinforcement is very, very confusing. So that's what creates that trauma bond. And the intermittent reinforcement can even happen within a day. So you could be dismissed or talked down upon, and then the next day or the next hour, things are fine, or whatever. Or you discover a big lie and there's a lot of confusion happening. And then the next day, everything seemingly back to normal, just kind of stuff it and move on. So that was a very confused and hard for me for so long because there were good things. There were happy times. There were lots of happy times and good times. So it kept me on that cycle of abuse. It kept me hooked on that cycle of abuse.
That oscillation, I swear people, I know we talk about it, but like it's not talked about enough. That mixture, it
Mhm.
keeps you so destabilized that one minute this is your husband, this is the loving person that your whatever, your boyfriend. It's, you love this person so much and they're so good to you. And you think about, whatever, Sunday mornings, laughing in bed and raising children and Christmases or holidays and vacations and, silly moments in the kitchen. And then they're screaming at you or cheating, or it makes your head spin. And we're so attached to the idea that they are a good person who's done something bad. You excuse it the first time. Do you have any memory of sort of like the first couple of times that something happened and how you felt?
Yeah, at the beginning, there was just a lot of angry outbursts. No physical, but physically, like punching a wall or, getting really upset or shutting down emotionally. There was sexual coercion involved as well, too. So feeling like I wasn't enough, feeling like if I didn't sacrifice my body or do that, then there was like a shutdown or a quiet, I'm stonewalling. So I do remember, and if I had the language for it now, if I knew what I knew then, I would know instantly. This is your body's telling you you're not safe, But a lot of that came with these last 5 years where I've been doing a lot of this. But yes, I do have memories of feeling confused. And a quote that I wrote down and I stuck to for so long is, if you're confused, you're being abused. If you're confused about how the person in the relationship feels about you, you are being abused. There should be no confusion. The person that you're with should be consistent enough to either work out an issue with, a safe response, a non-dismissive response, and listening with empathy, and wants to hear your heart where you can make a change. But if you're confused and they are giving you mixed signals, the hot and cold and the punishment and the shutting down and the dismissiveness, all of those things, it's abuse. I know that's so hard to hear.
I love that you said it because sometimes we need to hear the hard things, but I also just deeply agree. And I've said something so similar, that the confusion itself is enough to leave, because you either know that this person loves you or you wonder. You know, but sometimes you question the behavior. It's like, if he loved me, why does he? Yeah, that confusion is telling you something, because you don't question that. And I'm in a healthy relationship now, and I literally never question that he loves me. He's not perfect. We have disagreements, but he's not screaming at me, and I'm not questioning his commitment to our relationship or that he loves me. And like, that's huge. I used to wonder, and I don't
Or
anymore. I'm like,
who are you talking to? Who are you seeing? What are you doing outside of the house? where have you been? What have you been doing on your phone? Any of those things. It's like all of that perpetuates that. You can't get that word out. All of that perpetuates that. The confusion can happen outside of the relationship as well. And so for me, in this last like couple of years, there had been a separation and then a getting back together. And there were people calling it a miracle. So I had people in my life calling this a miracle. And
Huh.
I knew this was not a miracle. I got back together because I was codependent and in a trauma bond. And when I heard people start calling it a miracle, I knew there was a big problem. Like,
What did they mean?
because they thought that maybe it would end in divorce. We would never get back together. And then we did because I initiated to get back together because I felt like I was going to die. It was like, I die with you or I die without you, those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just such a horrid place to be. And then I had people start saying, this is a miracle, which made me so confused. I'm like, is this a miracle? Did I just perform an act of God by
Yeah.
getting back together, or am I deeply confused and trauma bonded and I don't feel safe, And I knew instantly. I was like, this is not safe. But yeah, the confusion can come from outside as well. So I just want to throw that in there. There's lots of people who will speak into your life, and you have to really seek out someone who's going to be safe and listen to you, that is a safe person. And finding safe people is hard.
I think a lot of people don't know what is going on behind closed doors. And I think there's sort of two parts to that. Like, picture, I don't know, a sister, a very best friend, if you're close with your mom. Maybe you're telling one or two people some things that are going on, but they appear to be isolated. And I think that people who love you truly and believe that they have your best interest at heart, it's like, hey, Sarah, maybe he's just got a problem. Maybe he's avoidant. Maybe he had trauma. Don't forget that he insert excuse here. And they're saying it to you from a place of like, don't worry, it's not that bad. Instead of, wow, that's horrible. Wow, that sounds like it hurt. I mean, I don't need people to be able to be experts and recognize like, hey, Sarah, that's abuse, because that's also a big accusation. I recognize maybe not everybody's trained, but just, wow, that seems like it really hurt you, would be better than, maybe we could make an excuse for your husband, because it makes you make an excuse. It actually enables abusers in a huge way.
100%. And I felt that for a lot of years. And so then I feel like I'm also crazy. It makes you feel crazy for like, I'm the only one that feels this way, because nobody sees the full picture. There are things that I have never told anyone, and I probably won't. So if you're not experiencing it day to day, until you find someone that's trauma informed, really understands what you're going through, and they can be like, this is why you're so confused all the time. This is why you feel like your body is just on fire constantly around this person. This is why you jerk or whatever when their touch doesn't feel safe. All of those things, you have to have somebody who knows about that and is trauma informed. And I've even been to several counselors who never told me those things, like there are healthy counselors too, and there are healthy coaches and there are not healthy coaches. You really have to find someone. And so a family member or someone even close to you might not see the full picture, and they're doing their best. But I think, yeah, it's very, very not helpful when there are people making excuses. It just makes you feel like you're just fighting upstream.
Yeah. And again, I wish that they just wouldn't offer anything. Like just say that sounds hard. Anything would be better, For anybody listening, don't say that to people. Don't make excuses for someone. We go from a place in the relationship of not knowing that it's abuse, not knowing that it's bad, just knowing something maybe feels off, perhaps. And we're living in this world of excuses because, listen, abusive men, they play the victim, they blame shift, they deflect and minimize, they make you feel crazy or like you're the problem or you're overreacting or they cheated because you didn't have sex with them often enough, whatever they do to sort of flip it so you don't recognize it. But we shift. There comes a point and we shift into the knowing that something's wrong or that it's abuse. And you sometimes can't leave. Yes, because of trauma bonds, but also family, money, religion, as you've pointed out.
Just the confusion of it, like I truly had to get to a place where I knew, but I still didn't fully believe. And I had to start writing things down. And so I would write things down so I wouldn't forget how the interaction was or whatever, and put later because it helped me feel less crazy because I started doubting and forgetting things. Like my own memory was not serving me well. So
yeah, we don't hold on to a lot of details in this. And that's kind of the point, I mean, the destabilization then and the oscillation of kindness and cruelty and all of this, it just fries your brain. You're in survival mode. Sometimes people feel like they have ADHD, and I'm
Oh, yeah.
talking about people who don't have it already. You're like, I'm not motivated. I can't remember things. I don't know what the hell I'm doing in my life. I'm so confused.
It started to get to that point. I mean, I've had chronic illness now here for 10, 12 years. And I do think now, looking back, hindsight's 2020, my body shut down really about 12 years ago. And I'm starting to feel healthy again. But that emotional abuse really, and I wanted I wanted to be able to say like, narcissist, this person is a narcissist, but I couldn't do that, And so all the things that play into it, toxic relationship, emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, they all have the same kind of patterns, right? So that's what I really had to learn is the pattern of the trauma bond and the love bombing, the devaluation, all of it. So
There's so much going on at the same time. It's like your head wants to explode. But again, this all is part of why it's hard to see.
mhm.
It feels impossible. They're making excuses, you're making excuses, and we don't even catch what's going on. When we start to actually see it, I still think that there's kind of a performance of the good wife, the good woman. And I think that especially in some religious conditioning, the good wife, she's forgiving. The good wife is compassionate. She's the helpmate.
Mhm.
How did that hurt you? And this is not an attack on religion or Christianity. How did this hurt your ability to see it and to leave?
I think because I have such a big heart and I do have a lot of empathy and I do see the childhood wounds and I do see all of those, I think it just left me in a place where I just kept forgiving, even though it was actually physically killing me, like not just emotionally killing me. My body started shutting down. I couldn't get out of bed. So that's how it affected me is, I denied it and I just wanted, I wanted to live those things out. I wanted to be that good, forgiving wife. And I was for so long. And then I started learning this is why I've been sick for all these years. This is why I can't get out of bed again.
That performance is tough. In many ways, I was sort of treated like the good girl, and I would get a lot of praise for my behavior. And I mean things like, I'm so glad that you're not one of those women like gallivanting around. I love that I know where you are. I love that I can trust you. And I know those things sound like praise to someone on the surface, but with abuse happening at the same time, knowing that now, that sort of good girl praise made me want to perform more good girl behavior and being more compliant. So it's still coercive control. It still sort of put me in this you can't leave. You can't abandon me. My mom abandoned me. You
I don't
can't
know
abandon
if that really played into mine too much, but very much a lot of empathy for childhood wounds or childhood issues and using that as an excuse really played into it a lot for me. And I still have a lot of, I can't not care about someone. It's like I do care about them as a person, but at some point you do have to realize you don't have to stay in the same type of relationship with that person to love them from a distance. Even if they've hurt you a ton, you can still love them from a distance and forgive them or not forgive them, whatever you decide, and move on with your life. Because I just, that's what I had to come to realize is I don't have to maintain the same level of commitment in this relationship.
Yeah,
So
absolutely true. Now, let me ask you, when you were experiencing this, did you know, like you know now, that trauma doesn't cause abuse?
no.
Not knowing that is huge, and
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. Now, again, I'll admit I didn't connect the word abuse to what was happening to me until I was already out, but trauma was the excuse for his behavior. He had a terrible childhood, his mom this, his dad that, blah, blah, excuses. But none of that made him the way that he is. Ultimately, I oversimplify this, but I think it's hugely important to be simple. He knows he's abusive. He knows that his behavior is bad. Because if you did to him what he's doing to you,
Mhm.
he would flip his lid, right? Imagine if you cheated.
And for me, maybe the childhood trauma played into it, but it was framed for me a lot as a sin. I just have a problem or an addiction. I have an addiction problem, a sin problem. And so, okay, that's not my problem then. You have to go fix your sin problem.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I have a sin problem? He has a problem with sinning? He's addicted to sinning?
More like addicted to the behaviors that were considered sins, I guess. So
Cheating? Yeah, fair. I mean, all of it is just such an excuse. And I think that it's such a perfect way to evade accountability.
Mhm.
I got to go get right with God. It's like, repeating the behavior.
Yes. And the accountability piece was also never really there. And that also set my nervous system on fire completely because my nervous system was always seeking, are you safe right now? I have to ask if you're safe right now. And then sometimes you tell me and sometimes you don't. And so I never know if you're safe for me in that moment. And I just really put all of that together. But yeah, in the last like 3 years. But
That makes sense. I don't think we recognize safety. I didn't think about safety. I thought safety was, are you physically safe? The concept even of emotional safety was absolutely foreign to me. It felt like fluffy therapy talk, and that was so not who I was. It made no sense. But, I get it now, and I was never safe, and you were never safe, even if we felt it at one point. But then, I don't know, you get to that place where you're like, I don't feel safe, but we're still in it, and we are trauma bonded. I know not everyone is or was, but when you are trauma bonded, and even when you're not, we are managing the reputation of our relationship, of our marriage, of our partnership, of our family. We want to manage that. And I see a lot of people struggle with kind of even realizing that we're managing our own reputation to a degree, right? I'm not the kind of woman that would be in an abusive relationship. I'm not one of those women. So I reject the idea that this is abuse or toxic. We just have issues. And the other piece to that is managing his reputation, because I think, speaking for myself, and I wonder if you can relate, so many people seem to, if I speak badly of him and then I don't leave, are my friends and family going to ask me like why I stay? I felt judged. So part of that was me, but I don't want them to think that he's a bad person because we got into an argument. Meanwhile, like, no, he didn't, it wasn't an argument, because I get into a disagreement with my current partner and he's not screaming the B word at me, but my ex would. And that was normal to me. Why?
yeah, I don't know. But for me, a big part of it was also feeling like it was my fault. And so I did so many groups and different church type of groups for women that really weren't helpful because that person was making a choice to continue to harm over and over. And so there was literally nothing you could do, nothing you could learn, nothing you could achieve to be different for them to stop doing this. But that's what I did for years, is took that on, took the burden of trying to fix myself, trying to, get right with however I communicated, or these things that could have, healing and moving on and forgiving and all those things. But ultimately, none of those things helped. And it was never my burden to carry. So,
yeah, shocker. You can't change someone else through your own work. I think in the end, we change ourselves, we change our tolerance for this, and we start to gain information. But which can be very freeing. But I think when you're in it, there's danger in going to therapy and there's danger in going to church groups because they don't have the full context. You don't even have the full context. That's why I actually feel like passionately strong, oh, so strong, that in the therapeutic communities, there needs to be so much more training on what abuse looks like. There is very little. And it's funny because I've said that many times, and ever so often I get a therapist being like, that's not true. We are so trained. When I have dozens, me personally, one human being, I can honestly count 30 psychologists and therapists that I have talked to that are like, absolutely, we are not trained in this at all. So maybe some programs cover it, but most don't. You kind of do need to specialize in it. And religion and religious counseling, as well as non-faith-based counseling, it's like on the premise that everybody's here, especially couples work is what I really mean. It's on the premise that we're all here to be collaborative and that we're both willing to make changes to make this relationship work. You'll never know that you're actually dealing with somebody who is narcissistic or abusive, and that it's a worldview. If we're going to base this on the premise that they can all just change, that they're all fundamentally good people who do bad things, you're not ever really going to be able to see it and get out.
And another thing for me is, even within Christian counseling and stuff that I had, the institution of marriage is put above of the person's soul, the person's mind, the person's spirit, the person's body. So whatever you're dealing with as an individual sometimes isn't looked at. They just look at you as a couple, and the institution of marriage, we got to keep this together at all costs. And the individual within the marriage is dying, So we need to have someone recognize that we're going to put the individual person over the marriage and the union. The person's soul matters more than this union.
Yeah. What do you think are some things that you did when you were kind of starting to see through all this that still kept the image intact of a good marriage, a good relationship?
I don't really know, but probably continuing to go to, family things together and try to maintain that outside reputation, whatever. But at home was not okay most of the time. So probably just trying to keep things looking very happy from the outside or posting happy photos or whatever, which I mean, a lot of that isn't fake either. So that's the confusing part. But yeah, I think just denying my own feelings, really, like just living in survival mode and denying my own gut reality. I had to get very brutally honest with how I was really doing and what was really, really happening. So
Self-trust is lacking in these moments, you know, over the relationship we get so groomed and conditioned to rely on them for how we feel and to kind of validate the experience, you know, like you're overreacting and it's sort of like, "Oh, okay, am I? All right." You just shift yourself. So then seeing it, you doubt it. You're like, "This is abuse, right?" I think you're so confused.
oh, yeah. Well, I mean, so a conversation we had had, which maybe you could speak to this, is I'm not abusive. I have done things that have been abuse to you, but I'm not abusive. So that really confused me for a long time too. Like, okay, he's not abusive. There's he just done things that are abuse, but not abusive. Like that was very much I believed it, for a long time. And that was a denial piece on the other person's part.
That is like a master of avoiding accountability. It's like I did the abusive thing, but that doesn't speak to who I am. I just do it all the time. So to me, and actually, to be fair, the actual definition, right? Abuse is a pattern of behavior, and a pattern, because that's a key, right? What does that mean? More than twice, more than two times. So if he screams at you, okay, and then he screams at you again, yeah, it's abuse. And that does make you abusive. I think that the desperation that some men feel, and I feel like that is the most perfect word, they are desperate to like disassociate themselves from the label because they don't want to be an abuser, but they're happy to be abusive. And you might think that makes no sense, but it really does because they don't want it to speak to their identity. It's just this thing I do. Yeah, abuse. If you do it twice, you're abusive. Some of them, but I haven't screamed at you in a year. So if I scream at you twice over 10 years,
Mhm.
I highly doubt the guy's going to scream at you twice over 10 years because it tends to be a lot more frequent than that. But it's just a way to kind of deflect.
Yeah.
But you buy into it because you're like, hey, we're married. We made a commitment. We made vows. He's not all bad. I love this
Or yeah,
person.
or he's trying, like it
Trying.
hasn't nothing bad has happened for 6 months. Okay, we're good. Like, that pattern of
Yeah.
holding
Round
your
me up.
breath, yep, and feeling like, okay, we've been good for a year now. Is am I safe yet? I don't think I'm safe yet. I don't know if I'm safe yet. So
Yeah. And you're not. And that's the thing is like your body would settle, your nervous system would calm if you were safe, but you're not. That type of rebuilding, even in a marriage where their vows have been broken or any abuse has happened, you would need long term, very consistent. And 6 months isn't even enough. To be fair, a year would be the fastest, in my opinion, to really start to, see change and heal. But you just don't see that. Like when you really think, if I yell at you once in a year, that matters. That's going to reset all of the pain. It,
oh
it
yeah,
just makes sense.
yep.
A lot of this can create a blindness. Like we're in it, but we are psychologically blind to what's going on. And it could be denial. It could be betrayal blindness, which is its whole other thing. I did an episode on that last season, actually, with Dr. Jennifer Freed, who actually coined the term betrayal blindness. It was a great one. But it always goes back to like, if you were more understanding, if you could just understand that he was struggling, and if you let me go to therapy, things will get better. They'll go back to the way that they were. Or it's your fault that I did this.
For me, it was a lot of you have too many walls up or you're too angry. That's what I started to really pay attention to. You're so angry all the time. Well, yeah, why do you think I'm angry all the time? Because these things keep happening. You have so many walls up. I don't know how to tear the walls down. Well, maybe stop doing this harmful thing. And so for me, it also became the impact versus intent. And so a lot of I wasn't intending to, but do you see the impact it's had on me? And ultimately, it was no, we're not able to admit about how deeply you've been impacted. And until you're able to admit that and fully get out of denial, you can't change, until you're able to truly meet yourself in such a deep way that you admit all the things that are true and see that person's pain deeply.
Which I've never really seen in an abusive man. They perform that sometimes, the good man, and the good Christian man, even, of performing, I get it, I hear you, I was wrong, I'm mean, fine, I was abusive, but I'm changing. But I think what's interesting, when you're talking about the distinction of like, okay, it was abusive, that thing was abuse, but I'm not abusive. That's confusing because you want to disassociate that with him. Like you have an investment in this relationship too.
Like what you said about them knowing that they're harming you,
Yeah.
that hurt me immensely to actually start believing that and knowing that to be true, that your boundaries have been set and then something happens to cross the boundary and they're doing something on purpose to harm you. They know they're being harmful in that moment. It's very hard to comprehend.
Let me ask you then, like when I said that to you, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was probably no. That's what I was conditioned to believe for so many. It was either an accident or a sin problem or an addiction problem or, lack of self-control, which is like, I have lack of self-control. I just need to get better with self-control.
Yeah, it's always something so easily fixed, right? I just have to learn how to be more in control of myself.
I believed that for so long. And so then it was like, okay, I'll do my part. Like I'm at a sex therapist. Why am I at a sex therapist right now? I don't have that problem. But I was still a part of those meetings and a part of those appointments, because I was trying my best, my hardest to make it all better.
I know we try so hard, but we can't fix broken men, nor should we try. We're not therapy for broken men, but also men need to solve their own problems with this. Like abusiveness is a worldview. It's a belief system that they feel entitled to be able to treat someone else this way. And the biggest indicator is what I referred to earlier, that if you treated him the way that he treated you, we all know that they would flip a table, right? So they know the behavior is bad, but they do it anyway. And once you start to see it, it's like, was there a moment or was it over time?
It was just very slowly over time when I started learning things probably 5 years ago. And it was becoming more mainstream and probably some of your videos that I had watched and some other videos on sexual coercion and just, lots of different things where I'm like, oh, this was emotional abuse when I believed a lie that they told me for years on end. That is not normal. It's not normal for someone to lie to you and make you believe their lie,
Yeah.
That's called gaslighting. And so then I was like, oh, I really have been because that word is thrown around so much these days. And so is the word this, but I'm like, oh no, I was actually deeply gaslit from the very beginning, like 20 years ago, in the true sense of the word, what it actually means.
What it actually means. I know. I often kind of clarify that, like truly gaslight. But you find yourself kind of adding in these language of like, no, for real, like an actual narcissist, like it truly was gaslighted. And it's because we're still wanting to be validated because we weren't in this relationship. When you've experienced gaslighting, it's like you want to express that or say that. But meanwhile, do you trust yourself? That's no, because of gaslighting. It's brutal.
It's begging for someone to truly see you and begging for love, where you're constantly just asking for validation and love from someone that keeps harming you. Like, love me as much as I love you. And then there's a lot of loving things that happen too that just keep you stuck, I feel like. And so it's really getting out of that mindset. And I mean, I think what you said, a big key is realizing that they know that they're harming you. And that kind of changes everything when you feel like, okay, they know they're continuing to harm me.
It's been my biggest message, of the last couple of years to anyone who subscribes or follows to any of my social media. He knows it's the message I want everyone to understand. It's oversimplified. I get that there's nuance and context, but fundamentally, they know what they're doing. And that is one of the keys to really being able to step out of this, is realizing that they know, because you can't hide behind they're traumatized and they're working on it and they're trying. They know what they're doing. And a man who actually understands that he's hurting you, he would let you go. He would not want to continue hurting you. It's like, oh, I'm hurting you? Okay, well, you need to stay while I figure this out. No, I do not. I'm being hurt. I thought you loved me. Now it becomes proof of your love to stay. But that's one of the issues, is this expectation of loyalty.
Oh, I've been working on myself for the last 6 months. Don't you see, I've been trying. But then you did something that was hurtful again, even though you were trying. There's so much confusion. If you're confused, you're being abused.
That's the message, I feel like, behind every perfect marriage photo and all the family outings and everything, there's always going to be a story that you'll never see. In some people's relationships, it's just simply not perfect. And in some people's relationships, it's hidden abuse. Abuse happens in plain sight. Plenty of abusive men are like the good Christian men that everybody thinks is a nice person. I wish that more people could understand that most abuse is actually very covert. And these men are in our communities and we do know them. There's this big myth, right? You don't know an abusive man. So many men deny that they even know a man like this. You know.
And those are the type of women I want to help, honestly. Those are the type of women that it was like, that was me 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So confused and just trying my best as a young mom with kids. And all along that those covert, very, very hidden, very confusing, but it is abuse. And those are the women I would really like to help them recognize when they're in that, because I'm not a man hater. I don't hate men. I know there's good men out there, but it's just recognizing those qualities in a man and recognizing those patterns and learning to trust your gut, learning to trust your body. So that's really what I have a passion for, is the hidden covert abuse, not the loud, in your face where it's very blatant. It's the really hidden secret stuff that I really want to help women.
I love that so much. I feel like if you're the woman who looks happy in all the photos, but you cry alone in the bathroom after you get home from family functions, you're not alone. So many women report like sitting in their cars, crying in their pantry. I want these women to know that you're not betraying your vows. You're not betraying your relationship. You are not disloyal. You are not selfish. You're not abandoning someone. You are just honoring yourself, and you deserve that. And you deserve to have the freedom to choose to leave if that's what's healthiest for you. And if it's abuse, it is what's healthiest. I firmly believe that. So I know leaving is hard, but I certainly advocate for women to get themselves out as easily as possible. Thank you so much for being here today. It was such an amazing
I
conversation.
learned so much from you last year when I took your trauma course or trauma bond course. So I just want to, pass it on. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you took that trauma bond recovery group coaching program and that you learned a lot from it. And honestly, I love that you're out in the world teaching people how to get out of this. There's space for so many of us. And unfortunately, there's too many women.
I have like a trifecta. It's like I know about emotional abuse and sexual coercion within the church and a Christian relationship, and then also physical cheating. So I can empathize with all of those things.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.